Today is an amazing day as we're doing another episode of our chat with Haute Residence members. Today's our first time we've been in Europe on our interviews, as we're actually in one of the most beautiful areas in the world, south of France. Or actually, where are you today, Philip?
Right now I'm in Antibes. I spent the day in Cannes. We had the MIPIM conference, the biggest real estate conference in the world, held in Cannes. And I met with a couple of people who are over from the States to be present for their presentations. So it's been a fantastic weather day. The rest of France is storming and raining, but we on the Mediterranean, we've got the sunshine.
Life can't be better than that, I got to tell you. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time. Before we get into it, I want to give a little biography. Philip Carlton is a well-traveled New Zealander who has lived all over the world, from the United States to Bermuda and across to Europe, where he spent time in United Kingdom, Switzerland, and finally France. Philip worked with the luxury hotel and hospitality industry for decades in London before transitioning to luxury real estate when he and his young family settled in France. Philip and the entire Carlton International team are based on the French Riviera, which means we physically visit and photograph all of our luxury homes and know the owners personally, as they are the leading estate agent on Côte d'Azur. So Philip, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
It's been a real pleasure, and I've been looking forward to this occasion.
So Philip, you're from New Zealand, correct?
Yeah, I was born and raised in New Zealand. I planned on a career in the hotel industry. Went to university to study the hotel industry in Switzerland at one of the finest schools there. Graduated and went to Bermuda, where I worked with a company called Princess Hotels International. They own hotels in Acapulco and in the Bahamas and Bermuda and San Francisco. And I really did my training and graduation period there, and then was promoted to the States and worked at the head office on the Avenue of the Americas. I was the reservations and sales director for the company for some years, and my daughter was born in New York, and then I moved back to Europe for a variation on the theme. Stayed in the hotel industry for quite some time before deciding to branch out on my own. Already at that time in London, I was a precursor to Airbnb before the internet existed. I had 2,000 apartments at my disposal with maid service 7 days a week. So it was like being in the hotel industry, but they were apartments instead. And that successful business took me to the south of France.
Interesting. What hotels did you work with in London?
I worked for a company which owned the Royal Garden Hotel in London, the Athenaeum Hotel on Piccadilly, White House in Regent's Park. We had a hotel, the Westminster in Paris, and the Royal Windsor in Brussels. Those were the London hotels. And then I became the marketing director for a company called Trust House 40. They were at the time the biggest hotel corporation in the world, and I was responsible for the international division with 45 hotels all the way across the world, including the Pierre in New York and the George V in Paris, and many other really fabulous hotels.
I mean, it doesn't get higher for luxury than that. George V's might.
No, I was very young at the time, and too young really, because I had such an important position. There was really nowhere else to go except go on my own.
That's what I'm saying, is I don't think you could go higher after George V. So what's remarkably interesting about your story is you're not from south of France. You always wanted to get the hotel industry. You went to college for the hotel. You went to the finest. I know the hotel for Switzerland has some of the finest education. You lived in the Caribbean, then the United States, then London. What made you think of A, moving to France, and then B, getting into real estate? Or did you move to France first, do hotels, and then do real estate? So tell us a little about the thought process.
Not at all. My pre-Airbnb adventure was very successful. And I sold the business at a youngish age and decided that I would move my family into a more international environment than that from London. And I looked for schools, international schools, and went to Portugal, to Spain. I even went back to the States to have another look. But decided in the south of France, where we have a good selection of international schools, English language. The schools locally have up to 25 different nationalities in them, so they do their courses in French and in English. And that's what I wanted for my kids. So that's why we came to the south of France. And in answer to the second part of the question, in itself, it's quite interesting. I was on a trip from Paris to Nice International Airport, which is down here in the south of France. And I sat next to a property developer who had opened an estate agency in the town where I was living and who had hoped that his brokers would sell the units he was developing. In fact, they weren't, and he was about to close the agency. Since I had nothing to do and I didn't actually need any money at the time, in the airplane, I said to him, look, I've got nothing to do. I'll be happy to see if I can make your agency run. So on the airplane, we shook hands. We didn't know each other. I had an appointment with him on the Monday following. He forgot it, of course, but he was good as his word. He took me across the road, introduced me to everybody and said, this is your new boss, turned his back and went away. So suddenly I was in real estate. And that was in 1982.
Wow, amazing. And where and what?
It
And,
worked. It worked.
well,
So
my
I made
next
the-
question
I made
is
the company a success.
was
The
the
rule
product
was
a good
that-
product? Was it a good
I'm
product?
sorry?
How was the product? Because obviously it was your first project. Was it
Yeah,
easy to sell? Tell us
absolutely.
about
I've
that.
Never been in real estate before. I had to learn the thing from scratch, of course, locally. I spoke the language. That was a big advantage. But it became a big success, and our arrangement was that if it became a success, he'd give me half the business, which he did. Never had a document written between us. And a couple of years later, I bought the rest, and that was the beginning of of a big adventure in real estate, with its ups and downs and successes and failures.
Well, they always say the key to success is sometimes just being at the right place at the right time. So
Absolutely.
what an amazing story. And so you did the project, and then, as you said, you had success. And tell us, and that was in 1982. So, I mean, that was a long time ago. So tell us how the business evolved from 1982. After that, where did you go from there?
Well, from 1982 to 1992 was the glorious 10 years. We were very successful as brokers. We became property traders as well. We bought and sold and renovated and constructed. It was also very, very successful. And I have to say that a lot of money was made at that time. And I reinvested all the resources that we came out of that into other projects. The banks were throwing money at us at the time. And in 1992, there was the first Gulf War, when the Iraqis invaded Kuwait.
Yeah.
And property prices around the world were heavily affected by that. In Europe, especially, because we're closer to North Africa than the United States is, prices dropped by 50%, 50 that was.
50%?
Yep. Interest rates were 18.6%. I had 50% borrowings and 50% cash. But my properties had lost value by 50%, so I lost everything. So it was the end of a glorious 10-year adventure. I lost the car, the business, the house, the wife, the works.
Interesting to say that. So, you know, because that's interesting. So you had a lot of success, and then you had, you know, you were buying real estate. And that's great because you're more experienced, and a lot of times people think like whatever comes up never goes down, you know? And so in the key in any business, specifically real estate, you know, it's always good to know that, you know, like now things are hot again, as you said. So it's like everything you buy, you know, in 2 years from now, you're up great money. But there's also times where you buy, and as you said, rates get high and things get cut in 50%. How were you able to pivot your business going through such a downturn? As you said, you lost the wife, the house, the car, and to turn it around to where, you know, tell us a little about that, because I think it's important. You know, probably people look at you and think life is great and easy, but they don't know the scars that you had to get to where you're at now.
That's absolutely true. Some of my friends and colleagues, they went for a swim and didn't come back. A couple of them threw themselves off buildings. So it was a very tough time. And for 2 years, while the storm raged above me, I just didn't put my head outside because every time I did, somebody clobbered me. So for 2 years, I really did nothing, lived off of the few resources that I had left and a motorbike for transport. And one day my girlfriend said to me, hey, aren't you going to work again one day? So it was just a sort of turning point. And I thought, yeah, well, let's do this. So in the basement of one of my former buildings, the new owner let me work there, and I invented Carlton International from scratch, just me. And that was the beginning of an adventure which today has 40 brokers and 6 offices, and we cover the entire south of France. And I'd like to say that once again, we're very successful. This time the scars are healed, the knowledge has remained, and I'd like to think that, as you suggested, we're in an extraordinary position to give good, solid advice to ensure that other people don't fall into the traps that I fell into.
And so, I mean, obviously, you're probably in one of the best destinations in the world. What have you seen, being an expert in the key markets over the last, from the first boom? As you said, banks were throwing money at you considerably, because obviously it was a huge expansion. Or who were the buyers during the time in the 80s? Who was coming in and buying the real estate?
The buyers were the same then as they are today. They are very international, every corner of the world. The other aspect of clients for this area is this is a resort area, but not just resort in the sense of vacation. It's a last resort area. It's where people come to when they need to go somewhere and have the resources to pay for it. For example, when the end of apartheid happened in South Africa, we got a lot of white South Africans coming to France thinking that things were going to go haywire in South Africa. When the Shah of Iran was overthrown by the current Iranian government, we got a lot of Iranians. When President Bush got into power, strangely, we got a lot of Americans. I don't know whether that's an indication of anything. I'm not a politician. But when both Mr. Bush and Mr. Trump got into power, we had a flood of Americans, clearly not Republicans.
That's interesting. So you're saying anytime a Republican goes in the White House, Americans come to south of France?
Let's look at it this way. If we get a dramatic Democratic president, we may get a whole bunch of Republicans over here as well. I don't know. But as I say, when there's something wrong in the world, they think, where is a nice place to go? Where will we be safe? Where is there good health? Where are there good education for the kids? Where can I reach all countries easily? Where is it politically stable? Where's the climate nice? And the south of France is about the best place in the world in that respect.
One of the things I like is, I mean, do you sometimes pinch yourself because obviously you guys take amazing photography of these beautiful homes that are like trophy properties. How has the real estate changed over the last 20 years? Are people building, I don't see a lot of contemporary homes in south of France.
It's a really good question. It's a really good question. There was a kind of constant, typical neo-Provençal architecture, sort of Mediterranean, large bay windows, tiled roofs, a bit what you've got in California, I would say. And that was the staple, that together with traditional homes from the area, stone built, lots of charm and character, beamed ceilings, but original ones, dating 200, 300, 400 years old. Those were the two trends. But in the last 5 years, the word contemporary has become part of the local architecture dictionary. We never spoke of contemporary architecture down here. It was modern, but it was never contemporary. Now we have some magnificent contemporary homes. It's very much the trend today. We must have at least right now, today, 10 potential buyers looking for land to build contemporary homes on, or ready-made contemporary homes designed by local architects so they can move straight into. Very little of it available. It's more expensive to build. There's very little standardized material, so the cost of construction for contemporary, in spite of the fact that it's clean and neat and easy looking, is an expensive item here.
Well, let's rewind there. When you say it's hard to get materials, is it due to COVID and through just, things are hard to get shipped to south of France, or has that been like that for a long time?
No, when I say materials, the standard materials, that's to say standard sizes, standard windows, standard doors.
Okay.
Contemporary doesn't need that. It's got to be handmade and made to measure. That we can do here. In terms of materials today and supplies, we have the same problems almost everybody else has right now. With the holding back of, during the COVID period, the holding back of supplies and distribution issues, we have that. But I see it as being a very temporary measure. We see improvements in it already. I'm guessing 6 months, if we don't have another wave or an alternative COVID variant, I think we will get back to a relatively standard distribution period.
So let's go back, because obviously a year and a half ago, COVID hit the whole world. We've been getting good info from different markets. Yesterday, we had someone from the Caribbean talking about how they were very fortunate because most of the Caribbean shut down, but they were the only country that was open. So she's like, just by consolation, I've never had more business because everyone was just coming to St. Croix. How was how was your market with COVID, and were people coming and were they buying, were they selling? What was the mindset of the consumer in the last 18 months?
It's been a most extraordinary adventure, and it has been completely contrary to what I had imagined.
Yeah, I mean, I got to believe, not to interrupt you, I got to believe when COVID hit, because you have how many offices now?
5.
And you have a lot of agents and you have overhead. So I got to believe you had a nightmare thinking going back to, the last crash.
Absolutely. We had sufficient resources, everybody, to ride the first period out. The government assisted in things like subsidizing the cost of salaried staff, but the majority of our brokers and consultants are independent. They work exclusively for us, and many of them have been with us for up to 25 years. So they were out on their own in a sense, but they had current transactions underway, and that was enough to support them throughout that period. There was a serious lockdown period for a while where we couldn't receive clients, we couldn't leave our homes, we couldn't go and visit new properties. But that didn't last too long. It was never really opened up, but we had the right individually to endeavor outside of our immediate environment. And we learned how to communicate both with the owners of properties and the buyers of properties from a distance. We created a competition for our owners and got them to video their own properties and gave them a prize. The one with the best video for his own property got a prize. So we could integrate their videos in our portfolio at that time. They were pretty miserable, but some of them were quite good. And we did a lot of communicating, obviously, through digitally with our clients from all over the world. And I was very surprised at how buoyant the market was during that period, even though people couldn't visit the country. Many of them were replaced by the French. The French managed to get out and visit houses, and they bought the houses that perhaps other foreigners might have bought had they been able to get here. But we did have an enormous success with selling by video. And when I say video, I mean that we were able to convince a certain number of buyers to buy without coming and without seeing their properties. We sold 4 homes up to $5 million a piece. Just
sight unseen, just on video. That's crazy.
Absolutely, sight unseen. We visited the houses with them. They looked under the house, over the house, from above the house. Then we introduced them to the neighbors. Then we'd walk with them down to the beach or into the village. So they were there. They got everything except the scent of lavender and rose. And on the basis of that, they made commitments. We raised mortgages for them without them being here. We signed the property title transfer without them being here. And now they're arriving as their own countries open up to allow them to travel, and the France is open as such. And now they're coming to see their houses for the first time. We did about $20 million worth of transactions sight unseen.
But what's now is because obviously, the last 18 months has been a trying time. but what is, leaders lead and followers follow. And what I think is important is you got two choices. You could either sink or swim, and you had to pivot, and it's not easy to go to probably clients that are trying to sell a $5-6 million home and say, hey, can you do the video? Can you do that? But if you didn't, nothing would happen. So tell us now, learning from this experience, how more efficient can your company be? Because, probably when you started, you'd never think people would buy a $5 million property sight unseen, but now people are doing it. So I assume if you have a customer now, you're able to sell without them even coming to the property.
Our big difficulty today is not selling, it's getting the stock. It's the inventory, which is greatly diminished. Absolutely. We have a real problem with that today. I mean, we have 700 properties on our portfolio at the moment. We really need 1,500, bearing in mind that we're stretching all the way along the coast from the Italian frontier to just beyond Saint-Tropez and high up into the hills behind the south of France. So it's a big area that we cover with responsibilities delegated to specific area managers, if you like. But there are areas where we have great difficulty bringing properties into the portfolio. As far as the efficiency is concerned, I would like to say that the whole process of selling the properties we did sight unseen was more coincidental. It was that people really were getting worried. They thought, we've got to get out of here at some point or another. We've got to have a home somewhere else. The people living in tower blocks wanted houses with gardens everywhere in the world. And if they thought, well, if we're going to get a garden, why don't we get one in the south of France? So that was our clientele momentarily. I think things will return to, I want to come and see the property before I make any kind of commitment. I'm sure that is the future. And in answer to your question, how can we do any better? Quite honestly, I don't think we can do any better. What we can do, and that is what we're trying to do, and that is why we are part of your outfit, why we wish to be your representatives in the south of France. And that's to create a better image for ourselves, become better known, get across the fact that what you mentioned in the very beginning, we are here. We know every house, we know every owner, we know every chemist shop, every school. We know how long it takes to get from the airport to any other place. We know how to recommend a good Italian restaurant just across the border in Italy. These are the things that we want the people to know about. That if they're considering a home in Europe, there's no better place than here. There really isn't. We get them from all over Europe. Americans and British who bought in Spain, who sell up in Spain and come to the south of France. It's not a comparison. The weather in itself is not enough. There's got to be culture, there's got to be good food, there's got to be easy transport, there's got to be schools. So that is why we stand out, unquestionably, as a location. So now it's up to us to get the people to recognize that there's no better intermediary, because we're the ones who can provide the information best and in their own language. We speak 14 languages in my company.
Oh, wow.
There are 40 consultants, and amongst those 14 different different home languages, mother tongues. So we can communicate in any language.
And so what advice would you give to somebody, because obviously getting into real estate, what advice would you give to somebody that you think is attributes to be successful and make it?
Anywhere in the world?
Anywhere. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I mean, your problems are the same problems, whether you're in California, Florida, inventory, I mean, everyone's going through this. I mean, inventory is the buzzword where there's more buyers than sellers, and everyone's running into an inventory problem.
Your question was, what would I advise somebody who's getting into it?
Yeah, so someone like you is leaving the hotel industry, and they want to become a star luxury realtor. What advice would you give them to say, hey, look, if you want to make it, these are the things that are important attributes? I
often have trainees in the business. And people who've never been in real estate before, who come to me with the aim of joining us. And I like to take people on who've never been in real estate before, because you can teach them your own methods. They can use their own personalities and so on. In France, the French are very rigid in their view of things, and I like to think that we are more open-minded. But I have 3 or 4 pieces of advice to these people. The first is never believe anybody until you have proof of what they're saying is correct. Whether it's the buyer, the seller, the colleagues, the other brokers, it doesn't matter. There's too much rubbish being spoken, and it's only when it's too late you find out that it wasn't the truth. It doesn't mean they're lying. It just means they didn't know. So that's the first piece of advice. The second is you need resilience, because the knocks are hard. You have to be able to face the fact that you can't win them all, and then you can work your backside off and not be a success at the transaction you're in the process of doing. The other is self-discipline, being able to get up in the morning, go out, do the job, and stick with it, that there is no day off. It's 7 days a week, and if you need a holiday, you take the day when you just haven't got a client that day. And the last one is that when you're successful, don't spend the money, because you may be successful this time, but you may need the money for the next time you're not successful. And ultimately, I tell everybody, you cannot sell a house. It is impossible to sell somebody a house. They buy a house from you, but you can't sell it to them. It's not a pair of shoes. It's not even a boat or a car. You can marry the buyer and the seller together. You can give it value. You can show it off. You can present it well. If they don't like it, you can't sell it to them. Therefore, what are you? You're a psychologist first. You have to psychoanalyze the seller and psychoanalyze the buyer and know what they really need and why. And that's it. There's no sales in this job. It's understanding the needs of the buyer and the needs of the seller and putting the two together.
Do you sometimes think your experience and training and education for the hotel industry is what made you successful? Because obviously when you work at hotels like a George V, I mean, you know, the customer service to the customers at a different level. Did you bring that to your real estate company? Is that why you're so successful?
Whether that's the reason I'm successful, I can't answer. What I can answer is yes, certainly that aspect played a very important role. A hotel is like a small town, and you have lots of people of different nationalities and different characteristics in one. And if you're managing a hotel, you have to manage the people first, not just the staff, but also the visitors. When you've got an Italian or a Mexican arriving in a hotel, he's not the same as a nice Jewish lady from New York. And it's not the same as an Englishman who's coming from London. All these people have their specific needs and their behaviors and the way in which they react. And if you're going to have any peace and quiet managing a hotel, you have to manage the staff and the guests with a lot of psychology and a lot of understanding and great service.
So where do you see your company in the next 5 to 10 years? What's your goal with taking your brand, Carlton International? Where do you see in a crystal ball?
If I had been able to feed you a question, that's the one I would have fed you. We are developing a web. I have to tell you that we have a good reputation and we have a good international reputation. And I received requests from all over the world, from agents and owners asking me to market their properties from other parts of the world. But we are here. And I don't know where the chemist shop is in Bali or anywhere else. So I can't handle that. I can't be sure that my fees will be paid if I don't have a handle on the owner and on the property and on the legal systems in another country. But I would very much like to do that. So we are in the process of creating a web portal. It's called Carlton Global. You can't look it up because it's not ready yet. But the aim is just that, not to deal with private parties. I'm not interested in taking instructions for sale from somebody who's located in Singapore. What I am interested in is having a partner in Singapore, and a partner in Florida, and a partner in Bali, and a partner in New Zealand if it has to be, high-end, same kind of quality, same kind of service, loyalty, honesty, and have these people's partners promote their properties through Carlton Global. So that is our immediate aim towards the end of this year. And the other is that because our brand is recognizable and because we have a good reputation, I am now getting inquiries from brokers in other parts of the world who would like to have a license to use the brand, use our logo style, use our methodology, and so on. And that is really great news. And I already have two now. One is in Portugal, shortly opening in, of all places, Paraguay. Probably another one in Saudi Arabia and in Spain. So that little by little, I don't intend to be Coldwell Banker or any other of the major players. Just choice environments with people in whom I have confidence and license the brand with these people. And this is really just starting now. So in answer to your question, those are the two targets I have today: expanding the brand in itself, in its own right, and being at the disposal of other brokers with their own brands, and being proud of that fact, because their brands are not going to be hidden behind Carlton Global. Carlton Global is only the vehicle. Each brand will have its method, rather like your own, in a different way, because I'm talking about property rather than PR and press. But that's the aim. And I'm guessing that by the end of the year, beginning of next year, we should be ready with that portal and start to market the idea to a certain number of partners, people who are already members of your structure and other organizations of which we are members around the world.
And what is like, if I wanted to get a trophy property, not the most expensive property, but what does a trophy property like run? Like in Miami, if you want a nice property house on the water, it's between 10 to 20 million. You know, there's houses that go to 60, but if you want something really nice, what's the going rate in your market for really nice homes on the water?
It's probably one of the most difficult questions to answer. Because the coastline stretches, as I said, from the Italian frontier quite a long way, a few hundred miles down the coast, the values along that coastal area vary enormously. But if you're in the prime areas like where I am now, much of that area doesn't have waterfront facility. There is a waterfront, but there are no houses on it, and you can't build houses on it. So it's only where there is buildable land and where there are existing houses that opportunity arises. For example, not far from Saint-Tropez, between Saint-Tropez, which is renowned for Brigitte Bardot and the sea and the nightlife and everything else, between there and, for example, where I am now, in Antibes or in Cannes, we have a waterfront property. It's 21 million euros. It's about 7,000 square feet of floor space. It has a fabulous pool on the outside and an indoor pool. It's a house which needs modernizing. It's in perfect shape, but it's perfect shape of a noble Italian family who have left it in its present condition, and it's come on the market for the first time. That's a 21 million euro property, but you can moor your boat there. You can dive from the house into the sea from there, as well as the pool, indoor and outdoor. So that's to give you an idea of it. It's a kind of trophy property, but that same property, if it was located where I am today, would probably be 50 million.
Oh, wow.
So that's to give you an idea. Just, if we could have a house that size in a position along the coast where I am at the moment, that would be the price it is today. So trophy properties are not just waterfront, they're also properties in the countryside. The most expensive property in my portfolio is 350 million euros. That's about $350 million. It's been sold once before and the deal fell through, but it is still available. It's the most expensive property, I think, in the world. I could be mistaken, it's a private home. But in general, our portfolio—
That's the one in Monaco?
No, it's not in Monaco. People think it is, but it's not. It's outside of Monaco. It's in France. It belongs to a Monegasque resident, that is true. But it used to belong to the King of Belgium many years ago. It's a fabulous property. But a good trophy property in general is priced between 10 and 50 million, depending on, ideally, its location, not on the quality of the home, on the standard of the environment in which they're located, the position of the house on the coast.
So Philip, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. I think your story is remarkable in that you had a lot of success immediately. You were investing in real estate, you were rocking and rolling, life couldn't be better. You had the wife, probably the Ferrari, you said you had the car, the wife, everything, and you went through a humbling experience, but every successful person goes through that. But I think what's most telling is the story of how you didn't quit. And you basically, as you said, you started Carlton International in the basement of one of the properties that you were renting at. You own the property, but the guy, the new owner, and now you're at where you're at right now. And I think the lesson to be learned is never quit and always believe in yourself. And it seems like you've invested in yourself your whole career, and you've done very well by doing that.
That's about right. And of course, the team that's around me makes that all worthwhile.
And so I know, I mean, if anyone knows you, I know you have amazing, because who doesn't like South of France? I mean, I'm in Miami. Who doesn't like beautiful, mansions on the water in Miami? But it's an honor to have you as a partner of ours. And I know specifically a lot of our readers and clients and users are looking for choices in South of France, but they want to, because in South of France, it's there's a lot of it's hard to differentiate, the reliable, responsible people. As we've heard some horror stories, as one of my good friends, rented a big house and the pictures were fake, and all that stuff. So I think you'll be an amazing representative, selling probably one of the most beautiful areas in the world.
Absolutely. And I'm delighted. And I'd like to thank you, Seth, for giving me this opportunity.
And I can't wait to go back there, because there's no one who likes pasta more. So you're going to be the guy that I'm going to be hitting up and asking where to get the best spaghetti in South of France. Thank you so much. And I know it's late there, so enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you again, Philip.
Thanks for having me.
Have
Bye.
a great day. Bye-bye.